Good afternoon. My name is Paula Joya. I am a smallholder farmer, a beekeeper in Germany. I'm originally from Brazil. And I'm a member of ABL, which is the German member organization of Via Campesina. And I will be chairing the session here today. Just to say that, the room is not so full here, but we have a bunch of people also online with us. So I would like also to invite the ones online, to also actively participate later during the discussions. We really want to hear also your voices. Welcome to everyone here to this session, which is called Developing a New Trade Framework and Protecting Peasant Rights. During the first part of this session, we aim to present to you a historical process that was led by Via Campesina, which is the global peasants movement, to develop and to achieve actually the approval of an international human rights instrument that defines, protect, and also promote the rights of peasants. And this instrument is called UNDROP as acronym. This stands for the United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Peasants and other people working in rural areas. And this will be presented to us by Anders Berendt from Denmark, who unfortunately could not make the way here to Oxford because of a snowstorm in Denmark 2 days ago. And then, taking the lessons from UNDROP, Via Campesina is now working on a very exciting process to develop a new international framework for agricultural products. This new trade framework is meant to be based on food sovereignty. And this will be presented to us by Morgan. And then we are going to move and then to see, how can we get also, the support of the UK government, for this new exciting plan that we have or project that we have, also hearing how the UK government has been, supporting or not supporting the UNDROP process, and also maybe, together with you then later in the discussion scene, how can we also develop strategies, to get the support of the UK government for that. So the idea is, in terms of methodology, that we have these 3 inputs first, and then we open the room for you, on one hand, to ask questions of understanding, but also, to participate in the discussion, and that we can maybe also together as a group here think about strategies, to influence politicians here in the UK and maybe also beyond. So that's the plan. Let's go. So as I said, Anders from Denmark will be sharing with us about the UNDROP process. Anders is a Danish young farmer growing organic vegetables. He's member of Freebounder, I'm not sure it's the right spelling, sorry, Anders, and also an active member of the youth articulation, the youth group of the European coordination, Via Campesina. And as I said, he will present the historical process carried by Via Campesina and also other allies to achieve the UNDROP approvement 2018. And also is going to share with us some of the key contents of UNDROP, why is it so important, the lessons that we learned from that. So Anders, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paula. And hi, Paula and Morgan and Dee. Sorry I couldn't be there with you and the rest of you. Glad that this is somewhat of an option. Sadly, the snowstorm wasn't behaving how I wanted it to. But yes, as Paula mentioned, the UNDROP is the result of a collaborative process between different social movements and civil society organizations, namely FIAN and CTIM. And the UNDROP is created out of struggles. So it's like a lot of work. It's 18, 20 years of work, depending on how you measure it. And it's a declaration written by peasants for peasants and other people in rural areas. So it's quite unique in the way that it establishes peasants as political subjects and therefore as right holders for the first time, which is, as I will get into later, quite of an important thing for our work. So just to give you the historic process, so when La Via Campesina was created back in '93, already then there was, as we know, systemic violations going on against peasants, and there was a lot of talk about a lack of legal framework and mechanisms for countering these systemic violations. So this led SPI, the Small Peasant Union of Indonesia, to take the first step in 2001, when they created a conference on peasant rights, which were later taken up by Via Campesina and other social movements to create these discussions about peasant rights and the need for them. And in 2003, Via Campesina created this global campaign for peasant rights and to end the systemic violations against peasants, and to really push for the need for these peasant rights in countering different discriminations and violations going on, and took this to the Human Rights Council in Geneva. And this led to continuous talks internally in Via Campesina, but also among other movements and other allies and within the Human Rights Council about the need for peasant rights. And through all of this work and all of these discussions and talk going on, it led in 2010, the Human Rights Council mandated a study about the need for a declaration of peasant rights, which then again in 2012, based on this study, the plurinational state of Bolivia, supported by other countries, presented a resolution about creating a UN working group to elaborate on a UN declaration of peasant rights. So when that was presented in 2012, then there was a negotiation process starting. So in 2012 until 2018, there was continued talks to try to influence this negotiation process, and Via Campesina educated and trained a lot of peasants to go to these negotiation processes, both to have discussions informally outside of the official rooms, but also to influence the presence in the official rooms. And this was like, of course, the work of Via Campesina, but also a lot of other different organizations were really pushing on in these years. So they were doing these for the negotiation process, but also doing advocacy directly towards the different governments to sort of push for the UN declaration to go our way, so to say. And then on December 17th in 2018, finally the UNDROP was adopted with a vast majority, 121 states voting for, 8 states against, and 54 absentees. So like what this clearly shows is that the process of UNDROP is the result of a lot of work at the grassroots level. Like I've been lucky enough to follow some of the other sessions going on at this lovely conference. And it has really been stressed that like the work coming from the grassroots level, from below, and this is like UNDROP is a clear process of the potential of this work, like the mobilization and the education and going on and building these alliances. And as mentioned, it is like a declaration which is based on human rights, but it has a unique focus on peasant rights in the way that it acknowledges our relation to land, our different struggles, and our practice of farming and growing food. What it also does is that it forces states to recognize these rights and acknowledge these rights. But this is somewhat like it forces them to it, but it's not. But this is not something that is just static. It's something that we need to push for, because even though it's in the declaration, there's still a lot of work to do. So what is really important is that the UNDROP is not just viewed as a static declaration, which is now written and then we relax and leave it be. And I don't think anybody here is doing that. But it's important that we view it as a tool, that it's a toolbox in our fight for food sovereignty and against capitalism and against patriarchy. And this is really, really important. And late last year, or in October, some months ago, the Human Rights Council created this working group for 3 years will identify and elaborate and promote different ways to implementing the UNDROP, but they don't have the means to implement it in themselves. So it's a victory, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And it's quite important that we really think of this as a big victory, but it's still a constant struggle that is going on. And therefore, as we see that this UNDROP is, like, as mentioned, it's a lot of work, but it's also been a lot of education. So I would really urge everybody to look into to the declaration, maybe go to the website Defending Peasant Rights, which has a great training program on it. And just to briefly, there's 28 different articles inside in the declaration. And there's a lot of very important ones, but like for the sake of the argument now, the three major ones I would like to highlight is the Article 15, which is the right to food sovereignty, which gives us the right to define food and agricultural systems for ourselves as peasants and participate in decision-making processes, which is super important in our work. Then there is Article 17, which is the right to land, which of course is obvious in itself why it's so important. And then Article 19, there is the right to seeds, which really stresses the right to develop, conserve, use, exchange, and sell seeds, which is really, really important these years, as we have seen. I have an example that in 2022, the Kenyan government tried to lift a 10-year ban on GMO seeds in Kenya, which they did. But then the Kenyan Peasant League, the member or a member organization of Via Campesina, used this UNDROP exactly as a way to fight this ban by referring to different articles in the UNDROP, some different ones, but specifically also the right to seeds, and also the right to participation and right to information, as a way to they made a lawsuit against the government for lifting the ban, and recommended the High Court in Kenya to keep the ban until this lawsuit had carried out, and luckily the High Court agreed. And this is just an example of how the UNDROP is a tool in our struggles, and as a way of arguing against these different initiatives. And sadly, this is not only the case in Kenya, but last year in Europe as well, there has been the push to try to deregulate GMOs, which luckily there wasn't enough votes to pass it through this December. But it has been pushed till this year, so the discussions are still going on, and it's just a way of showing that these things are going on all over the globe, sadly, but UNDROP is a tool for us, which is now being affirmed, and we need to use it. It's only as powerful as we make it. Like it's a static thing, but but we can make it dynamic, and it's very important for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Anders. I think you helped us quite a lot to understand, how, peasants are capable to bring, from their very reality, to bring about, change, but also to, to develop instruments at global level, to shape governance through the example of UNDROP. So thanks a lot for, describing this path that we went and that we are still going along now in the moment of, implementation of UNDROP at the different levels, and strengthened and also inspired by, this path that we did regarding UNDROP, and also seeing the urgent need to get away from this neoliberal trade order that we have set in the world today. And also, in particular, to getting, to getting away from WTO, and also taking into considerance that this was actually the very reason for La Via Campesina to be born. In the mid of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. The struggle against WTO. La Via Campesina is now, as I said in the beginning, organizing or developing a proposal for a new trade order, based on food sovereignty. And so, inspired by these achievements that we had regarding UNDROP, we have been working on a new proposal, and this one Morgan's going to share with us what are the ideas.
Thank you. Hello again, and thanks again for the invitation. Indeed, the idea is that as farmers, most of the time, what we do is we produce food and we sell our products. We eat part of our products, we share, but most of the time we also sell part of our production. And there is a kind of myth, is that we are free if I sell my production, I produce vegetables. I sell my production on a local market. And there is a myth that I can decide about the prices to which I sell my production. But it's not true. Because even if I can decide, but if my price is completely disconnected from my neighbors, from the supermarket, I won't sell anything. So I won't make a living. And so most of the time, the price to which I need to sell my production is completely disconnected from my work, from my cost of production, and it's very much connected to this global market where I feel powerless to define this. And this is the reason why everywhere in the world, but also in our countries, most of the farmers, we don't make a fair living out of our work. We work very hard, long hours, sometimes difficult work, and we don't make a living because we don't receive a fair price connected to the cost of production and connected to a decent wage for our work. And so this has been a long-standing struggle for La Via Campesina since the beginning to say that we need fair prices to get fair revenues just so that we can continue to do this wonderful job which is so highly needed for everybody. And this doesn't come out of anywhere. In order to get fair prices, we need market regulation. We need public policies that ensure that the market is not free, because this myth of the free market, it's about the power of the powerful transnational companies, of the most powerful guys on the market. And these corporations, they ensure that farmers receive as little as possible and to sell their products as expensive as possible in order to get a higher margin. So what we end up with is food which doesn't give fair revenues for the farmers and which is extremely expensive for the consumers. And what is worse is that in situation of crisis, they take advantage of the crisis to speculate and to sell food at prices with no connection to the price to which they buy food. And because of this, we have starvation in the world. There is no problem about the quantity of food being produced in this world. We don't need more food to be produced. It's even 1/3 of the food production which is being wasted in the world. Almost all the people who don't have access to food because they can't afford to buy the food at the price to which it's sold, and or they don't have access to land and to water to produce the food that they need and that their families and community need. So it's really a major issue for La Via Campesina to work on this issue of trade in order to get fair revenues and a nice life for the small-scale food producers. And this means working with the governments. I think this is something that all our organizations do. Whether we are in a country where we have a friendly government or in a country with a non-friendly government, but we go and say to the government, we are here, we are representing small-scale farmers who are always a vast majority of the farmers. And so we have the right to be listened to, and you should listen to the people, to the consumers, to the farmers, in order to develop public policies which are linked to the public interest. And everywhere, in the UK, in France, in Germany, in Brazil, in Colombia, in Mali, the members' organization of La Via Campesina talk to the governments, sometimes in very difficult conditions. Of course, there are countries where it's just becoming impossible because of authoritarianism, repression, and so many things. Even sometimes as well in Europe. In my country, for example, right now, it's very complicated to have a discussion with the government, seeing the move towards the extreme right. But we stay firm in the sense that we want to be heard by our governments. And so this is what we have done with UNDROP. We went to the UN, we discussed with governments, and we start to work with them. And in particular, it was absolutely key that we had some allies among governments. And a key ally was Bolivia. It's still Bolivia for UNDROP. And Bolivia has decided to work with La Via Campesina to bring our proposal to the Human Rights Council. And in that, without Bolivia there, we would not have been able to do this. So that was extremely important to have this permanent discussion with them to know how to move forward. Now we think that it's really time to do the same thing on the issue of trade. As you know, be it in Seattle in 1999, in Cancun in 2003, in Hong Kong 2005, and then in Buenos Aires 2016, still in 2022 in Geneva, we've been permanently demonstrating against WTO, but also demonstrating against a lot of free trade agreements. For example, we are very active right now against a possible, but no, it's not going to happen, EU-Mercosur free trade agreement, because that would be a disaster both for comrades in Latin America and for the small farmers and peasants in Europe. But discussing also with some governments, what they told us is that most of the countries, in particular the southern countries, they can't get out of the WTO. Because if they go out of the WTO, they will be completely isolated, and most of the countries, they do need some international trade. So we thought, okay, what can we do in this context? And what we can do is that we can build another trade framework that could run parallel to the WTO during some time, but then allow, at one moment, when the context would be ready for this, countries to get out of the WTO and to start organizing their trade, and in particular their food and agricultural trade, within a new framework. And as up to now, no country has been drafting such a framework, we thought, okay, we're just going to do it ourselves. And then we're going to go and see governments. We want to go and meet with people in the UN to propose our framework. We know it's going to be a negotiation. We know it's going to be a long way. It took us 18 years for us from the first moment we proposed the UN Declaration on the Rights of the Peasants to the moment it was approved by the UN General Assembly. But that's how we are as peasants as well. We know that it takes time from the moment we put a seed in the soil to the moment that we can harvest the fruit. And this is a long way to go, but we think it's really timely to do so. Why is it timely to do so? The WTO is in a big crisis. Last year, and that was a big sign of their crisis, they asked for a meeting to Via Campesina, which had not happened since 2005. I think they were really confused. So we told them, no, we don't think that you are legitimate to deal with trade, so we don't want to talk with you. And also discussing with people, including in the EU, everybody will tell you, well, informally, never officially, that WTO has no future. It's very clear for everybody. But it's still keeping there because there is no other place to replace it. So now we really think that it's time to, so we've started to draft this, which is a very dirty draft, a first draft of what should be the rules for international trade based on food sovereignty. What food sovereignty is not food food autarky. We don't want strictly every national state to produce exactly what it consumes. It's not about that. It's about democracy. It's about people's control about food production and also about trade. And it's about the fact to make sure that trade or international exchanges benefit the people. I'm very happy to continue to be able to drink coffee thanks to international trade. And I think that, I hope at least that some people are very happy to benefit out of, French cheese thanks to international trade. It's fine. It's really fine. What is not acceptable is that from Europe we send very bad quality chicken to Western Africa that destroys the capacity for Western African small-scale farmers to produce chicken. What is not okay is that we receive so much cheap tomato to France that it's not possible to make a living out of producing tomato anymore in France. That is against our interest. And that is even more problematic that when there is instability at the global level, and there is more and more instability at the global level, well, there is this speculation in many countries, this is leading to hunger. For example, what happened to Sri Lanka in 2022 was Sri Lanka didn't, because of COVID, they didn't have dollar anymore to pay for inputs and food imports. And so they were in a situation where they say to all the farmers, okay, you need to move organic from one overnight, which is impossible. I am an organic farmer. It takes time to go organic. And then they went into a big food crisis just because they had put all their priority to tourism and to the production of organic tea, and that they had not supported the production of food for their people. So what we want, and in the proposal that we have started to draft, is the first article is the right to food sovereignty for all countries. So the right of all people and countries to determine their own agricultural and food policies. The fact that we have the right to regulate our domestic agricultural and food markets so as to ensure adequate food production at stable prices that meet the needs of each country's population. And doing so, what is not allowed is to dump cheap products to other markets, to impose exports to other countries. That is, for us, it's not okay. We believe that agricultural, food and trade policy must encourage the relocation and democratization of food systems by ensuring the transparency and accountability of those involved in food policies. So we have several articles like this. First big chapter, so it is on the right of food sovereignty for all countries. A second other chapter, it's on the fact that we want to promote international cooperation and solidarity. For example, one thing that is not acceptable in the system right now, we all speak of free market. But the US can decide that Cuba is completely under blockade and cannot trade anything. How is this possible? That one single country can decide that another country cannot trade. So what we want is also to ensure that all the countries have the right to trade and cannot be completely cut out of any trade of medicines, of food, just because another powerful country decides that it's under sanction. We also think that country or government-to-government trade should be promoted. It is something that is still existing. Well, actually in Asia, in the rice exchanges, it doesn't go, most of the trade doesn't go on the market exchange places like it goes for corn or for wheat. It's mainly about government-to-government decisions, setting up a price and quantities which protects them out of speculation and out of the activity of speculative actors on the financial markets. So we think that kind of tools can be very interesting. One key issue that we need to deal with, and that is a burning issue right now, is the issue of price and currency, and in particular the fact that international trade is almost all under the hegemony of dollar. And this is giving a lot of power to the US with no responsibility. And we really believe that we should promote a diversification of the currency and the fact that countries should be able to use diverse currencies or, if they want or if they need, to also exchange products against other products. And that this would really alleviate a lot of issues related to the debt. Another issue that we want to deal with is the issue of conflicts and natural disasters and the issue of food aid. Because what we are witnessing is that very often the moment of natural disaster is seen as an opportunity by transnational companies and by interests mainly from northern companies to enter the markets into southern countries, for example, imposing GM products. When a country is under a big disaster, they need food aid. And some countries and some transnational companies are using this terrible moment to impose GM products or to impose products which are not accepted. And then they use it as a Troy horse, to then impose their production. So this is something we want to get rid of as well. So now, what we want to do in the upcoming month is to start approaching allied organization, possible allied organization, which can also support this project, but also governments and or political forces that can also support this. So we know that the UK is a challenging one, but it doesn't mean that we are quite sure that even in the UK there are forces which can support such a plan. And it's about to find these people, to start a discussion with these people, to see how we can start building alliances, building conferences, so that little by little, in all countries, it becomes clear that actually there is no alternative. It's going to be that, because the WTO is dead, because free trade agreement will not be able to deal with the challenges that we have. So we need to build this consensus that what will be the future will be this trade framework based on food sovereignty. And for this, I think it's really important that we share about this. And so thank you a lot for being here. And we hope that we can work with you on all this in the upcoming month and year. Thank you.
And thanks a lot, Morgan. I forgot to say Morgan is a vegetable grower in the Brittany and currently the general coordinator of Via Campesina. And to complement, Morgan's presentation, we also brought a short video where also other members of Via Campesina are speaking about this project.
fuera, la OMC solo le ha servido a las cooperaciones para que nosotros los campesinos cada día tengamos más pobreza.
Lorsque l'OMC a été créée en 1995, ils ont prétendu que le libre-échange allait assurer la sécurité alimentaire partout dans le monde. Mais aujourd'hui, nous savons tous que cela est faux, cela est un mensonge. Non, le libre-échange n'assure pas la sécurité alimentaire, bien au contraire. Le libre-échange affame les populations parce que le libre-échange détruit les petits paysans partout dans le monde.
WTO increases the power of corporations in international markets. They grab all things, food, food staples, commodities. All of those sectors are under the huge power of international corporations.
We social movements also protesting. We were instrumental in blocking those people to advance their interest all those years. We were there wherever they are, whether it was in Cancun or Nairobi or Bali or wherever in Argentina, everywhere.
전 세계 소농들의 조직인 비아 캠페시나는 30년 동안 WTO에 맞서 싸워왔습니다. WTO가 해체될 때까지 우리는 우리의 존엄성을 지키는 UN 농민 권리 선언을 가지고 우리의 투쟁을 계속할 것이며 우리는 반드시 승리할 것입니다.
En memoria de aquellos que nos antecedieron, esos compañeros, esas compañeras derramaron sangre y dieron vida para que nosotros y nosotras hoy podamos estar aquí, o de aquellos que están presos o presas por luchar, estamos aquí.
Et dans ce contexte très difficile, un certain nombre d'États du Sud considèrent que le jeu n'en vaut plus la chandelle. Il s'agit notamment de l'Inde, mais aussi d'un grand nombre de pays d'Afrique, des Caraïbes et du Pacifique. Aujourd'hui, ces pays disent qu'il n'est pas plus possible de faire passer le commerce avant l'intérêt des populations.
Social movements in India, particularly Indian Coordination Committee of the Farmers Movement, initiated a vigorous campaign against RCEP negotiations, and our Prime Minister Modi ji went to Bangkok. He said, my conscience is not allowing me to sign this. Farmers are opposing, our industry is opposing, our people are opposing.
Tenemos soluciones, tenemos esperanza, promovemos esperanza y tenemos la fortaleza, y lo hemos demostrado durante la pandemia del COVID. A pesar de todas las restricciones, a pesar de todas las dificultades, hemos logrado alimentar a nuestras comunidades y más allá de nuestras comunidades.
We need a new legal framework based in people's food sovereignty.
WTO out of agriculture. We need agriculture for the nation development.
มันใหญ่กว่าที่คิดมันไม่ใช่เรื่องการแสวงหากำไรแต่มันเป็นเรื่องของจิตวิญญาณมันเป็นเรื่องของวิถีชีวิตของพวกเราอยู่ด้วยดังนั้นเนี่ยเราคิดว่าWTO ถ้าอยากจะมีอยู่นะคุณก็ควรจะออกไปจากเรื่องของภาคอาหารและการเกษตรของพวกเราซะ
Usir WTO dari pertanian. WTO memiskinkan petani dan menyebabkan kelaparan, kemiskinan, dan konflik agraria. Keluar WTO.
WTO가 농민을 죽인다. WTO가 농민을 죽인다.
OMC dégage. OMC patate dans ta gueule. OMC, il faut sortir de l'agriculture.
WTO out of agriculture. WTO out of agriculture. WTO out of agriculture. For the ones here in the room, I'm sorry for the, it was very small, so probably difficult to read. But you know, the video is also available in the different channels of La Via Campesina website, so you can check it once again there. Thanks a lot, Morgan, for this, to give us this overview, and also, you know, for this call for building alliances, and also for bringing this challenge also to the UK. So now we're going to hear from Dee. Dee is Dee Woods from the Land Workers Alliance, which is also a member organization of La Via Campesina here in the UK. Dee, we would like to hear from you, you know, how has been the work with the UK government in terms of, you know, approval of UNDROP, and in general, no, how can we, you know, cooperate or not with the UK government at global spaces, or how can we, you know, find the allies that Morgan was saying, that maybe there are some allies here, no, in the national context. So how would you pick up this challenge that we are bringing to you?
Deep sigh. The UK government is one of the 8 who voted against UNDROP, and one of the 2 who voted against the recent Human Rights Council working group for UNDROP. So challenging is an understatement. Post-Brexit, we thought we had opportunities to bring in more friendly legislation, both nationally and including trade, and we have none of that. What we've seen is an undermining of our standards here. So currently, trade deals are undermining our farmers, and that's all farmers, and not just agroecological farmers. With trade deals that are being made, you know, we face sort of really poor products coming in. A lot of them have been made on WTO rules, which means neither side wins. And this is especially so for farmers in the majority world, and the impact is that the price here makes a lot of food unaffordable for the people who really need it, and on the other side, the farmers barely get anything. So we have a long history of working with DEFRA and with lobbying different governments, and we have managed some small wins, but this one is going to be challenging. And the UK recently held a global convening against hunger and malnutrition, and reinforced their commitment to the wrong direction. So GMO, privatization, big ag, and it's not the way we want to go. But we do have an opportunity. This is an election year in the UK, and we have some manifesto asks that we're lobbying all the parties. And this has come out of our work that we did on positive trade, which is a precursor to what La Via Campesina is doing around food sovereignty and sort of developing trade policies based on food sovereignty. So part of what we're asking for are seasonal tariffs to apply to imported produce, which can be grown in the UK, and that these should be incremental as the domestic production comes into season, so that we protect farmers when our supply increases locally. We're looking at ecological footprint tariffs or border tax adjustments to disincentivize produce with a high ecological and carbon footprint, including from production, transport, and packaging. And we're looking at higher import standards. So those are the three main asks that we're going to the parties with. But as I said, we have a fuller document on positive trade that we will be lobbying the government with and the parties. It's also difficult because we have 4 devolved nations, and whilst Wales, Ireland, and Scotland have really good policy, the issue is England and central government policy. So where are our allies? Who are our allies? I think we have people within different parties who are allies, who would drive things forward, and particularly around the right to food. And we have allies in terms of other organizations like War on Want and IPES Food, and but this is extremely, extremely challenging. And I think what we need to happen is that groundswell of people using their power, their votes, to move this forward. So I think coming nearer to elections and before PERDA, we might do a campaign to get people to lobby their MPs and to, hope and to vote differently at the polls. But as I said, difficult. So if you go online, you can find our fuller document on both our vision for the food system here in the UK, which is in our election manifesto, and there's a fuller document called Positive Trade, which parallels the work that we're doing globally. But sorry, we're not miracle workers.
Yeah, thank you, Dee, for that. Contextualizing or breaking it down for the UK context. So now it's time actually to open to the floor. And again, I would like to especially invite also the ones online to be actively part of that. First of all, there is the opportunity, of course, to ask questions to Anders or to Morgan, concrete on the UNDROP or also on the new trade initiative put forward by Via Campesina. But at the same time, we also want, or not but and at the same time would like also to invite you to, to bring your suggestions, your ideas to the discussion. Would like to shape it as an open discussion. maybe also to bring new ideas to what Dee has already described, also the difficulties. Maybe there are other people here in the room or in the Zoom who have brilliant proposals and strategies that can enrich the strategy to lobby the UK government in the direction that we want. How to build these people's momentum to shape trade in a way that this is based on rights, this is based on solidarity, and a vision of future. So the floor is open. First of all, I'd like to ask in the Zoom. Yeah, is there some contribution?
Yeah, so there's a question from someone from the Nicaragua Solidarity Campaign that says, have you identified any particular countries that you could work with as you did with UNDROP?
Okay, is there any other in the Zoom?
Yeah, there's a few. Hang on a sec. Sorry, we just got
Maybe
one
you
ready.
can read 3 of them and then,
will the rights to seeds remove EU seed registration rules, varietal lists, etc., which price out small seed producers and heritage varieties? That's one question. And what impacts, good or bad, have happened since leaving the EU?
Okay, so who'd like to go first? Anders, Morgan, or Dee? Okay, Morgan.
Well, on the issue of country, I think it's a really good question. We haven't identified one single country, but obviously the geopolitical situation and the fact that the BRICS countries are being stronger, we see this as an opportunity. Because obviously the WTO system and the system of so-called free trade has been built by and in favor of the corporate interest of the US and EU corporations. And a lot of including corporations of sovereign countries, and in particular the BRICS, are feeling that this system is not fair to them. And they are right. I mean, the WTO system in terms of the agreement on agriculture, for example, it says that the 50 billions that the EU spent into subsidies are not distortive on the international trade. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's obviously a lie. But they pretend this and nobody says nothing. And so, yeah, Brazil, Russia, China, they can feel very good reason to feel that it's not fair to them. It's not fair to their economy, it's not fair to their people, and it's even not fair to their corporations. But probably right now, this day, it's not ready yet. But what we know, and what we've been told, including by people quite high in some countries, is that the time will come. Because there are more and more crises. Because this system based on the Western domination is falling apart. And it's so unfair. And it's also the fact that they are so much supporting on the genocidal war against Palestine, it's showing how unfair this is. And they are losing legitimacy. And even if this situation right now can seem quite desperate, but I think we are also falling into this barbarity because they are so weak. And so now they find no other way to impose their power but brutality. And so we are getting closer to a moment where changing the system will be possible. That's what we want to build. At least we want to build this momentum. And so it's very important that we build a good draft, a good strategy to be prepared for the moment where WTO will fall and something else will come up. We need to be ready to have the people's demand in that, because otherwise we know that these countries are not angels. We are quite realistic about this. So we need to be sure that we are strong enough to impose really a trade that is in favor of the people's interests. That's what we want to do, and the moment could come in a few weeks, in a few months, or in several years. We don't know. But we need to prepare and we need to build the momentum. That's what the proposal is about. So I will let you respond on...
Anders,
yeah.
Anders, you want to go next?
Sure, but I might have to have you repeat the question, as there was a little, but it was about GMO seeds, just to clarify.
It was about what, sorry?
Which of the seeds question.
Yeah, sure. Just going to find it. Yeah, so it was as well as seeds, also starting plants and plugs that are mass grown and then traded and grown on in other countries instead of growing from seed. And now this is not regulated and undermines traceability. And they rely on synthetic inputs and use of chemical ripening agents, ethylene, the cost of these which many growers, bananas, tomatoes, grapes, etc., cannot access. It continues. And the use of peat still as a growing medium here, how this is now harvested from the global south and imported to the global north, who have exhausted their peatlands. So there's a need for local compost and growing media making there.
Yeah, it was, I think, a different question before about seed laws, I think.
But before that, there wasn't. I didn't see a seed question before that one. What about, will the right to seeds remove EU seed registration rules, varietal lists, etc., which will price out small seed producers and heritage varieties? Was it that one?
Yes, I think that was.
Thank you.
Did you get it, Anders?
Yeah, somewhat, if I understand it correctly. So the right to seeds, as implemented in the UNDROP, like the right to seeds is it's a universal declaration, so it needs to have it needs to be used in a local context, so to say. So it's hard to say of a universal consequence of this. At least in our view, it's something that is needed by peasants to be used in a local context. So the example that I gave about the deregulation of the GMO in the European Union is like the right to seeds is an argument against the deregulation of GMO. So it's a way of preserving seeds, of preserving the biodiversity of seeds and the practice of cultivating and exchanging seeds and selling and using our own seeds. And it's a tool against the monopolistic practice of seed companies to try to put a patent on biological processes. So it's a little bit of a complicated issue, but it's but as far as I understand the question, the right to seeds is more of a counter argument or a positive way of framing, like this is what we want, instead of what we are always like framing what we're against. Like we want to preserve the right to seeds, we want to preserve the right to exchange these things. So it's an argument against these types of initiatives as the deregulation, but it's also a positive in the way that it affirms what we want and what we want to do. I hope that sort of answers the question.
Thank you, Anders. Also, Morgan would like to add here.
Yeah, just maybe to complement. I think seeds is a perfect examples of where we have contradictory international law. So on one side, we have UNDROP 1991. We have also all the laws around patents, also linked to the WTO, which are against us. But we also have the International Treaty on Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture, in particular Article 9, which is recognizing the right of farmers on our seeds, and in particular the right to exchange our seeds. And we have the UNDROP. So in this, at the international level, just like at the national level, we have competing contradictory laws. And this is a battlefield. And we should continue to fight for the tools which are in favor of us, to defend these tools, and parallelly speaking, and also to fight against the tools which are against us, But I think it's very interesting to see. And actually, what happened at the end of the year, I think you say this on the seeds, ECVC, the European Coordination Via Campesina, we've been struggling against the deregulation of the GMOs at the European level. To be honest, we were very, very lonely. It was very few organizations struggling against this. The Spanish government had said that it was a priority of their mandate of their presidency of the EU from July to December last year, and they did not manage. They did not pass the deregulation of the GMOs. And now with so there are elections at the European Parliament in May or June. And we're going to continue to struggle, and we are now quite hopeful that we can prevent any deregulation, because we are here. Honestly, if we, as Via Campesina, we were not struggling against GMOs in Europe, it would pass. But the fact that we maintain this struggle, and so that we maintain this moratorium and quite strict regulation on GMOs, it's so important at the global level. Because if we lose at the EU level, this will have very bad consequences for a lot of other countries. So our battle here is important at the global level. And up to now, and we have to be very proud of it, I think, we are winning. We went to the German Ministry of Agriculture to lobby so that, and they abstained, which was for us very important. And we will continue to do so. Now it's the Belgium, which has the presidency of the EU. We have 3 members organizations in Belgium, and we will continue to fight. And this is how we get important victories, by fighting weeks after weeks, month after month, and sometimes, yeah, maintaining the small protections that we have, but which are absolutely so important.
And just to add, one other victory was that the Spanish presidency also didn't pass the EU-Mercosur free trade agreement. So, you know, I mean, the battle continues, but, you know, we won for now. Okay, Dee, please.
Brexit, that wonderful mess by politicians who got swept up in a certain type of nationalism that has had many impacts on you know, our food and agriculture system. There have been some small wins. So part of that is ELMS, the environmental land management scheme, which replaces CAP. I mean, it's still in trial, and we really need to protect it. And that means the smallholders who couldn't be part of CAP because they didn't have enough land, they now can participate and receive subsidies for the work they do. And this includes urban small holdings and social benefits as well. So that, you know, that is a win as long as we don't lose it. But this government has literally thrown everything out. The years we have been working on a national food strategy and the white paper, that just all went into the bin. The horticultural roundtable to produce a strategy, that all went into the bin. And currently, all farmers are fighting the supermarkets about supply chain, and there's a debate coming up in Parliament to discuss that. But basically, this government is not for farmers. This government is for big business and agri-food.
Thank you. It feels like this is a very key year, no? And I think it's really important to get organized to lobby well, you know, in this election year here in the UK. I would like to open again the floor, and now to see here in the room. Here there is one, and then second person.
Thank you. It's a question to Morgane. Thank you for the really interesting presentation on the new trade framework that you're developing. I really look forward to hearing more about it and being involved in dialogues around that. Just one question for now. Are there any aspects of the current WTO frameworks that you would want to bring forward into this new framework? I mean, you've said this is really something separate. I'm thinking, for example, of the dispute settlement boards and some of the kind of technical capacities that have been built up within WTO. Could you see those as part of a different and more equitable trade framework in the future?
Thank you. The next question here, please.
Thanks. Hi again. I'm Ruth. I work for Transform Trade. I've worked on trade for about 20 years. So a couple of things. Morgan, we talked about this a bit earlier, but before you had the WTO, before you had GATT, you had a thing called the New International Economic Order. And actually, the GATT, the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, was kind of like a tiny little piece of what was supposed to happen. And that was, at the time, the main driver was to aim at full employment and rights and other things. And that, although it kind of fell, mainly because of the US Congress, is still kind of held by UNCTAD. And I kind of wonder whether it's worth just looking at that and thinking about, well, if it's held by UNCTAD, there must be some countries that are interested in it still, and maybe we need to, maybe that's a interesting way in to developing some more momentum. Back in 2013, we were involved in a thing called the Alternative Trade Mandate at EU level. It wasn't perfect, but it might be worth looking at and thinking about, you know, what went well, what went not so well. I think it's the Transnational Institute that kind of hold that work now. In the UK, in terms of allies, you have the UK Trade Justice Movement that has 60 members, including unions, War on Want, Global Justice Now, environmental groups, women's groups, all kinds, church groups, all kinds. We're working, and so are CAFOD, on seeds and UPOV stuff, so it'd be really interesting to collaborate on that stuff. I have a question, which is, are we saying no to the entire of the WTO, or are we just, because in the video at times it was agriculture out of the WTO, which I think is still difficult, but easier than down with the entire WTO, right? So if we're saying we want food and agriculture out of the WTO, then that, you know, I'm just wondering which it is that we want. And the last thing is just on environmental standards and CBAM. So environmental standards in the UK, the work started with TTIP, and mainly with John Hillary, who you may remember from War on Want days, who just spotted it as a massive media opportunity. Chlorine-treated chicken from the US is going to undermine your standards. And it was only ever supposed to be a wedge in to the more substantive issues. So although there is merit in looking at environmental standards and defending them, it's a tiny little, it was only ever meant to be a tiny little inroad into the bigger problem. So I think I would encourage you not to kind of stop there and not to see it as a big thing. And the other thing is, please be careful about the CBAM. The Africa Climate Foundation and the LSE just produced a report saying that if agriculture is introduced into carbon border adjustment mechanisms, it could cost Africa 25 billion, right? So we've written a quite strong report saying we can't actually see the value in a CBAM. It doesn't seem to do a whole lot for climate change. And actually what it's saying is, let's protect the industries in the UK that have massive historical responsibility for emissions. And now we're saying, oh dear, poor them, it might cost them a bit to do something about climate change. So we're really skeptical about the CBAM, but there's a lot else that we could be saying about food policy and trade in the UK. So we'd be really interested in collaborating on that. Thanks.
Thank you. I think maybe this block goes mainly for you.
Well, we are for the dismantlement of the whole WTO, but we are focusing mainly on agreement on agriculture because this is where we have knowledge as well of what it does to us. We don't believe, and we will not support any reform of the WTO. Something quite interesting that happened in Geneva in July or June 2022 is that some organizations who had been working and struggling for a long time for a reform of the WTO in the sense of being more in favor of the farmers, they stopped to believe in that. And they came to us and said, no, there is no way. We won't succeed in reforming the WTO. And for us, that was another reason for strengthening us and thinking, okay, it's really time to build something else. And the dispute settlement, right now, actually, the US does not obey to it. So it's only the weakest countries which need to obey to it, while the powerful guys, they don't care about it. So it's also part of the injustice of the WTO, of having rules only for sovereign and poorer countries, while the richer countries, they don't have to follow any rules. So yeah, no, I don't think that we would save anything out of the WTO. The UNCTAD is a very interesting space. It was created by the non-aligned country, and UNCTAD stands for UN Conference for Trade and Development. And also related to that, there is right now a treaty in negotiation in Geneva in the Human Rights Council, a treaty on the right to development. And that is interesting. We can be very critical on development in the sense of economic growth and all those things. But to this right of development, it's really much about the non-aligned country right to decide about their economies, to decide about their territories and all those things. And so actually there is a set of opportunities there. I think it's 50 years of the new economic order. This treaty on the right to development and all the framework where some countries and groups of countries are trying to find a way. And for example, we find it interesting. I was in a debate with a representative from CEDEAO, from the Western African, and they see how much this current trade system goes against them. And they want to build other things. For example, the idea to build more regional trade, where countries like in the EU, we trade together. And that's better than trading very far away. And so the fact that Mali, Senegal, Ivory Coast could trade with each other instead of trading with with France, which used to be the colonialist country, would be much better for them. And that's something that they are wanting to build. So we see capacity to discuss and build alliances with countries, but also with group of countries, and definitively with UNCTAD. And in most of these institutions, there are good people who want to work for the interest of the people. So we need to find these people and to try to see how we can build alliances. It's not only very abstract bodies. It's about people. There are people who are against us in these bodies, but there are also good people who we can work with. And it's really about doing the work. And I think it's also about being confident that we're going to change it. We're going to achieve this. And with this confidence to work with them. And the issue of, we are completely against carbon markets and also biodiversity markets for Via Campesina International and also for ECVC. For us, these are false solutions which are maintaining a bad system. And we want, in terms of climate, we need in Europe a cut into the agricultural emissions. We don't need a carbon market on our land, which will greenwash the emissions of big companies. And we see all these, most of our countries are very actively supporting carbon market. Now at the EU level, there is the carbon farming initiative. We are against it. It's quite difficult to be against it because really in the beginning, ECVC was one of the very few movement at the EU level to say, no, we don't want this. Most of the environmental organizations were saying, okay, we can maybe negotiate. But for us, this is about the financiarization of climate. And this is not the solution because it's, again, giving all the resources to banks and people who will be selling carbon credits. And that's not us. So very clear. And also on the issue to finalize on the issue of standard, I think that food sovereignty, it's also about our capacity and our right to define our own standard, and the standards can be different in the UK, in Sri Lanka, and in Colombia. But we also see that at least the EU is using this issue of standard to try to continue to export while protecting itself. And this is not food sovereignty. Food sovereignty is mutual. Food sovereignty is for everybody. It cannot be that we defend the food sovereignty of Europe against the food sovereignty of Senegal. That cannot be. And that is very dangerous because it is what the far-right political parties in Europe, what they promote. They promote the fact that we can protect ourselves, but we can continue to attack with our commodities and products the markets of other countries. That is not acceptable.
Okay, thank you, Morgan. I would like to, we have 7 last minutes. I'd like to see if there is still any comment either from the Zoom room or here in the floor, here in the room. And I would like to especially encourage people, also to bring ideas on how to move the UK government. Is there anything in the Zoom?
Did you get the question that was asked about which countries voted against UNDROP?
Yeah.
If you had that, did you hear that question already?
No, we haven't this question yet. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the first one.
Okay, so maybe we leave it here because there is also one person here in the floor, here in the room, and we don't have much time. So maybe Anders, you can prepare for this one.
Yeah, which is a position of Via Campesina towards fair trade, as it is?
Okay, so Anders, which are the countries which voted against UNDROP, the UNDROP approval?
I can't remember off the top of my head. It's there's quite a few. We know UK is the one as Dee mentioned, but that's the only one I mentioned.
It was, I can give some names. It was UK, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Those countries, Israel, and actually Colombia with the previous government, and actually also Sweden. In that it was a very, I think 8 countries, there were 8 countries, and Sweden in the very last minute, and especially because they said this goes against the right of indigenous peoples, because there is also a declaration there on the rights of indigenous peoples. But this is actually, not correct, because we developed UNDROP based on the experience of indigenous peoples. We work together with indigenous peoples, and indigenous peoples are part of UNDROP. No, so anyway, this was a short question, and then I forgot the other one. The position of Via Campesina on fair trade.
Just on this, I want to highlight something. Also about what we managed to do. Spain, Germany, and Belgium in 2018 they had abstained on UNDROP, and last year in October, it was only Germany and Belgium voting, but they voted in favor, and which was thanks to very big work in these countries to lobby the governments to explain why it was important to vote in favor. And we know that Spain was not voting because Spain is not a member of the Human Rights Council right now, but if they would have voted, they would also have changed their vote. So we do have a capacity to change the vote of our countries doing the lobby also. So that's something.
But coming from Germany, it is of course our capacity for lobbying, but it's also about using the political momentum in the country. There was a government change in Germany, between 2018 and last year. So we used this momentum, with the current government, also to change the position of the country. So we also have to use some windows of political momentums that we have there also to advance our causes. So,
yeah. Now on fair trade, I think we are quite critical of fair trade. Because fair trade, it's mainly about having a small niche of what is pretendingly fair in a world of injustice. And one of the problems is that it's not all the actors of fair trade, but some actors of fair trade don't give a damn about changing the whole system of injustices. They are okay with just maintaining their small niche, and we are not okay with that. We want to change the whole unfair system. And another question is that even so-called fair trade products, if you see the number of hours that is needed to produce these things in the southern countries, and the number of hours to buy them in the northern countries, you see how unfair it is. The fact that we don't challenge the domination, the currency domination of the dollar of the EU on this makes that it's the whole. Yeah, it's normally an hour of work in Bolivia should give them more capacity to buy something as an hour of work in the UK or in France, and that's not the case. And the so-called fair trade organization, most of them, they don't challenge this. So I went to a fair trade conference, I think it was last summer in Berlin, but to challenge them, to tell them, is this really fair, what you are promoting? Is the fact of selling a bag that has taken a woman 8 hours to do to most of the time higher classes or middle class people in France or the UK or Germany, is that what we want? It's not what we want. That's not the system that we want. And also it's about the fact, we have the same issue a little bit with organic products, in the sense that I think some of us believed that growing organic, we could save ourselves by getting a better price, by getting into this niche, and that this niche could grow bigger. And that's not what's happening. Now we have all the organic market which is falling apart because the people in Europe have less money to spend in this. Most of the middle class, it's difficult for them, so they can't buy these products anymore. And what we are getting aware is that the organic is just another market for the supermarkets and the big agribusiness. So we cannot believe that only through having small niche with better prices, we're going to save ourselves. No, we need to change the whole system, even if in between we are doing as we can. I am an organic producer because I would not survive producing vegetables and selling non-organic. But our goal is to change the unfair system, not to build small niches.
Thanks a lot, Morgan. And with these words, we would actually conclude this panel. And I would say, yeah, let's work to get WTO out of agriculture and, to push for a trade system based on people's needs and also on human rights and especially on peasant rights as well. Thank you a lot for coming and, yeah.